Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I can hear I think someone's playing the Xbox. And welcome back to the channel. With me today I've got Red Dead Panda, as you sort of heard from her quite often from the channel. And Zemi Games. We've got a guest appearance from Zemi Games. How are you doing, Zemi?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, yeah. And Panda, you can hear if you're still there, yeah? We can hear you okay.
Yes, I'm still
Yeah,
here. I'm just
cool.
busy playing the DLC of Minecraft Dungeons to
Oh, it's
see
come
what
out,
it's
is it
about.
already? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
first part of it.
yeah, I think you completed the first time round, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
was an easy game to get 100%. I'm in a bit
Yeah.
of an achievement whore, so yeah, can't
Yeah,
help myself.
Same.
oh, I can't stand achievements. I think I told you guys. I've even turned my achievements off. I just don't care for achievements whatsoever. But anyway, just getting into it. So today we're going to get up. Let me first sort of do an introduction. So, Zemi, do you want to sort of do a quick shout out to where you are on Twitter and YouTube? I like to do them at the beginning of the show, just in case people are not around at the end.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so on Twitter, you guys can find me at Zimmy Games. I do just typically what everybody else that has a YouTube channel does on Twitter. You know, whenever I create a new video, I always post it out on there. If I find some interesting news, I tweet and retweet news like that out on my Twitter. And then also my DMs are always open. So if you hear something on today's show that you like, or maybe hear something that you don't like, always feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open. I love interacting with the community and meeting new people. Then you guys can also find me on YouTube under the same name, Zimmy Games. I do a bunch of gaming content over there, tutorial videos, news, reviews, unboxings, all sorts of things over there as well.
Right. Brilliant. And yeah, Zemi's a good bloke. I've been chatting to him the past week or so, and you can see him on various other sort of channels. Panda, we hear from you each week, but you're going to remind us whereabouts where your YouTube channel is and Twitter is.
Okay, so new to YouTube in the sense of starting my own channel. So you can find me at Red Dead Panda Gaming, and also I am on Twitter at Red Dead Panda 1. So please feel free to follow, message me. I'm happy to engage with everyone. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know
certainly.
what to say other than I am just a real gamer like yourselves, giving my opinion and kind of trying to breathe some positivity into the Xbox community.
Well, it's good today. I'm going to enjoy today's show because we've got three very opinionated people, and we might not necessarily agree with each other, which is great. So let's go. We've got a couple of subjects to go through, or maybe three subjects. Let's start on the first one, which I think we'll bounce first onto Microsoft may get Mortal Kombat and Lego if it buys WB Games. So this is basically the news that recently come out about Microsoft acquiring, possibly rumoured, WB Games, which will include things like Batman and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and various other titles. So, what's your take on that? Who wants to fire off first? Zoe?
Yeah, sure. I can go
Yeah,
first.
go on. Go on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So about Xbox potentially getting Warner Brothers. I mean, I think it's really really interesting, and I've actually talked about this on a lot of other
Yeah, I
podcasts.
can imagine so. I was talking
And so
about it. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of conditions, I guess, to this topic. Of course, Microsoft is possibly looking into getting Warner Brothers, and AT&T is possibly looking to actually maybe sell it. And it's currently rumored that they are wanting to or looking at selling it for like $4 billion. And Microsoft has more than enough money in
Yeah.
capital probably to get that if they want. But there's also other companies that are looking at it as well, such as Take-Two, Activision, Blizzard, and EA, and probably Google, and probably Amazon and Apple would be maybe interested in getting it as well. But what's really interesting about this is that you know Microsoft is one of those companies that they are not putting a lot of weight into how many consoles they can sell. They're putting a lot of weight into how many services they can get subscriptions for, right? They've really shifted their ideology here recently. And so, how do you grow a service? You have more content put onto that service, right? And same as Netflix, same as Audible, same as HBO or whatever, the way that they put more content on there is they buy rights to TV shows, they create their own TV shows, whatever it may be. For Xbox's case, we've seen them acquire a lot of studios here recently, and acquiring WB Games as a whole, or maybe going to AT&T and saying, hey, we want Rocksteady and we want Avalanche, we want Monolith and NetherRealm, and then all the other ones you can just sell separately, right? However it works out, whether Xbox buys WB Games as a whole, or they just pick and choose which studios and which IPs that they want, that would be an excellent way of putting more content onto their service. Speaking as Xbox Game Pass, and possibly leading to more subscriptions. So I mean, ultimately, it makes a lot of sense for why Xbox would want to do this if that was what they were after.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I don't think that they would want Google to purchase this, because this would be massive for Google
absolutely.
if they bought it for Stadia.
Yeah. Well, and we've heard Phil Spencer say that some of his biggest competition is Google and is Amazon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And of course PlayStation is definitely a huge opposition to Xbox, competitively.
Yeah.
But really and truly, we're looking at Sony. I think I heard that they had $70 billion. That's what Sony was worth or something. I don't really know exactly what the numbers are, but I can tell you right now, Google's worth a heck of a lot more, and so is Amazon. And both of those companies are looking into getting into game services.
Yeah.
And so for Xbox, those are two very, very big competitors. So, Xbox going and getting Warner Brothers games or getting certain,
Would block
parts of
Google.
Warner Brothers games is absolutely, it would definitely block Google.
Yeah, which I think is what they're most interested in.
And my opinion is I think it's a great idea. I think that if they could manage to get a lot of those studios and a lot of those IPs, it's going to set Game Pass up to be even more amazing than it already is. Value for money, value for the gamers, value for everything, because it's not only going to be value for Xbox gamers themselves, but PC gamers because of Game Pass Ultimate. But I think some people are concerned what's going to happen with the studios if any company is going to actually buy these studios. Are they going to strip them for parts like we know EA sometimes does? But I think that kind of coincides with that interview that was on, was it Industry.biz? From Matt Booty, and talking about the acquisitions of the studios and how they've treated those new studios amongst the Xbox ecosystem and all of that, how they were looking after them. They were still their own studios. They didn't really jump in and say too much. They kind of let the people come up with the game ideas and leave them to do it until the games could stand on their own two legs, and then go, this is what we want to do. Do you want to provide any input in? Matt Booty's got the idea of having a hands-off approach, so I think that's kind of a good idea of, if Microsoft was to obtain these studios, that they would probably take an approach like that and not gut these guys and do these companies some not a disservice. That's what I want. I would prefer a company like Microsoft to take those studios rather than destroy them, rather than gut them and move them into one studio, because they're amazing studios. They've made amazing games, and I think they deserve to continue doing it.
Well, Rocksteady and Batman games are, I don't think anyone can say a bad thing really about Batman games. So they're fantastic games. So that'd be, and you can just imagine these going to Game Pass. I mean, they might even make these games exclusive. I don't think they even would have to make the games exclusive. But if they just drop them day one on Game Pass, that would just be a massive win for Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the main thing is just that, because let's just say hypothetically, because there's a lot of nuances to this, is how many of these studios would they be willing to get? Would it be the whole lot of them? So let's just go on.
What IPs would you get?
Absolutely. Would you get the IPs, right?
Yeah.
I think that the deal is really only worth doing is if Microsoft did get the IPs that coincide with the studios that they're getting, right? Because otherwise, I think there's too much risk for Microsoft. Let's say that they acquired all of the studios, but they didn't get any of the IPs. Well, all of a sudden you have 9 or 10 studios that is going to take supporting each of those studios for up to 3 years. That's on average how long it takes for a game to be in development and come out. That's a lot of risk, and that's a lot of money that you're going to have to dish out. So I ultimately think that there's no way that they're going to acquire a majority of these studios without getting the IPs. And with them getting these IPs, I hear a lot of people worried and upset about how, Harry Potter, for instance, that is currently being rumored to being made by Avalanche Studio, the recent Harry Potter RPG, or Batman, or Lord of the Rings, or Mortal Kombat from NetherRealms is possibly going to become an exclusive. And I don't think Microsoft would do something like that. Looking back to whenever they purchased Mojang and the Minecraft franchise for $2.5 billion. Yeah. Absolutely. We saw that with that. They of course continued supporting Minecraft on PlayStation. Yeah. They released Minecraft Bedrock for the Nintendo Switch. Minecraft Dungeons came to multiple platforms other than Xbox, because ultimately you're going to make more money in the long run doing something like that than you are holding the franchise to your specific platforms.
Well, it's like holding it hostage.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And in certain things, for certain companies that may work out great. For instance, Sony, they own the Spider-Man license for games, right? And so Spider-Man, the recent Spider-Man that came out in 2018, was released solely for the PS4. Well, PlayStation's entire, ideology is on selling consoles, is selling hardware to sell games. Whereas Xbox has a different ideology. They don't care if you buy their consoles, so long as you subscribe to that service, whether you subscribe to it on PC, whether eventually your smartphone with xCloud, or, whether you get the $200 console that's rumored to come out next gen, or the $500 console. It doesn't matter. They just want you to be on their subscription, and they want to open up as many avenues to sell you that game as possible, because they're going to make more money that way.
Yeah, software sells more than consoles do, so agree with that.
And make more money.
Something that is so
and they're
going
to make more money. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
software
think they're going to
console sales.
Acquire all of the studios. I think if they were to acquire any, it's going to be very, very well thought out around how is this going to improve our Game Pass library, how is this going to impact, the gaming community in general, because Phil has been very adamant about saying that they're going to be clearer on what is exclusive and what is not exclusive. But even if there were games that didn't go to PlayStation, those games will still go to PC. Like, most people own a PC to some degree, and if you don't want to spend that money on a PC, but you still want to play the game, buy an Xbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it is
absolutely
simple and obvious. Those are your options. You're not hindered by saying you have to buy this one system. It's just you doing that. If you choose to only play on one system, you're the one holding yourself back at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if they did buy WB or those game studios, is if they get access to other DC characters, like Superman, will be in the future see a Superman game made by Microsoft. That would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that does, like what you were saying, Panda, let's just say hypothetically Xbox did get all of these IPs, and for a majority of them, let's just say hypothetically, they did make them lock them down as Xbox exclusives, similar to what they did with Halo and what they did with Gears of War. Even still, that would be that would still be really, good. It wouldn't be good for the PlayStation gamers, but it would be better than, it would be better than for
holding
say,
it just
like,
on Xbox.
what PlayStation does with theirs, right? Because there's more avenues to access an Xbox exclusive, whether it be through your smartphone, whether it be through your PC or the Xbox console. And then also kind of to touch on note of like what you were saying earlier, I think ultimately if, Warner Brothers or if AT&T does decide to sell, which it's still unknown if they really do want to sell. They haven't 100% decided on anything, but if they did, I think it is in every gamer's interest, regardless of if you are on PlayStation, you are on PC, you're on Switch, it doesn't matter where you are. I think it's in everybody's interest for Xbox to gobble up as many and acquire as many of these studios as possible. Because like what you were saying, you know, it, you know, the morality of this whole situation is that there are going to be people who lose their jobs. Some of these studios are probably going to get dissolved. And we have seen EA do that countless times after countless times. And then ultimately, we as gamers don't really have that strong of an opinion of Activision and Blizzard. Recently Blizzard has laid off a tremendous amount of employees, right? Take-Two, they are a microtransaction hungry company, right? And so to imagine the next Batman game with 15 billion microtransactions, if you will, it's not going to be the greatest thing for gamers. And then you even look at Amazon and Google possibly acquiring these companies. Obviously, Amazon and Google, very big companies, but they don't really have that strong of a knowledge of the gaming industry. I mean, look how bad Stadia is failing right now, right? And so to, allow those companies to get these very well recognized and beloved studios, could scream disaster for the longevity of a lot of these studios. So ultimately, Microsoft, I think for a lot of people, should be the pick of who they would want to acquire these studios, because Microsoft, chances are going to bring all of these franchises to all platforms, and they're going to take care of these studios. Exactly. There's going to be layoffs. There's going to be cuts. Some of these studios may not, make it. For instance, Warner Brothers Games has a lot of support studios. There's, WB San Diego and WB. There's like two other ones I can't think of, but there are a lot of support studios. There's Portkey Games that they literally all they make is mobile games. They may not make the cuts. They may be they may be transitioned as much as they can. And Rocksteady, that's also located in the UK, but there will be cuts. But I think Microsoft is going to do the best with acquiring these studios compared to these other companies.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, look at it like. Phil's a gamer. He knows what gamers want, essentially. So he kind of puts that, yes, at the end of the day, it is a business. But he understands, like, in order to be successful, you also have to look after your consumers. And if you just kind of throw things back in their face and just funnel everything with, like, microtransactions, you're going to piss off the people who buy into your ecosystem. So I agree. Like, I think there will be layoffs. No matter who purchases it, but I think Microsoft is in the best place to take the best care of these people. Like, maybe they might not be in that studio, but they could be dissolved and put into the other existing Microsoft game studios that are already there. Their talents might be able to be utilized in other areas. Who knows? But they've just got a history of showing that since Phil's really kind of gone to the forefront and shown what they're about and what Microsoft is about now, like with the Xbox, in comparison to what it was at the beginning of the generation. It's really changed a lot of people's minds about that company itself. Like, it's no longer just like a corporate company where you're like, they're not there looking after you. Yes, they're there to make money, but that's all they care about. They don't care about your opinions. Like, Phil replies to people on Twitter and then talks about how someone's given this great idea. I'm going to pass it on to the people, onto other people, and see if we can implement it. You don't see that. You don't see that at all. Like, Sony's execs do not really interact with anyone. I don't see that on Twitter. I don't see that anywhere, really. Like, it just doesn't happen, and it's just there's a lot of positivity coming out of Xbox, and I feel like that's why our community is so looking forward to this new generation.
Well, no doubt Phil's probably been spammed.
Faith in them.
Yeah, no doubt Phil's probably been sent loads and loads of messages by people saying, please buy them, please buy them, please buy them. And he's probably seen the countless YouTube videos on YouTube of people saying please buy WB. No doubt he's seen all of that and he'd be taking it all in. But it's at the end of the day, it's not down to him. It's down to Microsoft, isn't it? Because he can't just go spend £4 billion. Sure. So it's ultimately up to Microsoft.
I think they're going to be smart about it.
Yeah.
Well, of course, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people talking about, Microsoft has, is a company that's worth $1.6 trillion, right? Yeah. And you hear that a lot, on social media. But what we also have to remember is that Microsoft is a company that's worth $1.6 trillion because they make good decisions, right? Yes. They know when to show them and they know when to hold them, right? Yeah. And So I mean, ultimately, they're going to do what's in their best interest, regardless of, how many million people are screaming on social media. But I think ultimately, acquiring Warner Brothers makes a lot of sense. Even whenever you count in that they hopefully will not make any of these games exclusive. They may not be exclusive, but they're going to be put on Game Pass day and date at no additional charge. That's going to increase their subscription rate dramatically. Imagine the next Batman game being on Game Pass day and date. Imagine the next Lord of the Rings game, the next Mortal Kombat game, the next whatever game, right? Being on that service day and date, that's going to do huge numbers for their service. But here recently, there's actually been some really interesting things that have happened over at Microsoft. Microsoft has recently dissolved Mixer, right?
Yes.
And then also they have recently closed down or are planning to close down all Microsoft stores besides 4 locations, and they're relabeling those 4 locations as more of experiences rather than retail stores, right?
Yeah.
So what that screams out to me is that Xbox, or well, more specifically Microsoft, is doing a lot of restructuring, right?
Yeah.
And why would they be doing such, all this restructuring? I don't know, but part of me kind of thinks that it might lead to maybe a little bit of evidence showing that they are definitely very interested in possibly gobbling up a lot of these Warner Brothers studios. They're freeing up resources, they're freeing up manpower, they're freeing up money so that they could better support these studios, possibly.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Right, have we done that subject, Dave? Should we move on to another subject?
Yeah.
Yep, I've said everything I wanted to say.
We could talk about it forever, but it's not going to change anything until we hear more.
Yeah, it's very unknown.
Sony invests $250 million in Fortnite app maker Epic. So this is news that's just come out. Sony invested $250 million in Epic, and basically what they get is to put the investment into context. Senior analysis Nico Partners Daniel Ahmed said Sony's $250 million nabs it a 1.4% minority stake in Epic, which values the company at just under $18 billion. Which Panda, do you want to leave this?
Well, I myself am quite intrigued about why they've done it. Like, what are they getting out of it? And I really want more details to come out. Like, are they going to be getting something from Epic in the way of technology that Epic uses for their games? Like, that's my thoughts there. Or maybe it's, I don't know. It's like there's not enough details about it. No. There's so many things that they could be doing.
Well, let me just cut in
why
here.
They've made this move.
What it says further down, because that was my question. There's not actually, there's no real solid what they're getting for it. Here it says the investment cements an already close relationship, and the opportunities for further collaboration, primarily around entertainment. So not necessarily around games. Which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting about this is that whenever people think Sony, they think PlayStation. Because let's just be honest, PlayStation is probably Sony's most profitable division of their company. But they also make other things, from headphones, audio equipment, cameras, everything, right? So it's not, possibly. I think everybody's looking at it from the PlayStation side of things.
Exactly.
And absolutely, but it may not necessarily be to do completely or 100% with PlayStation.
It could be, I don't know, because Sony does movies and other things.
Music.
It could definitely be something. Yep, music can be definitely something within those realms. I think whatever it is, we're going to hear more about it shortly, hopefully,
Yeah.
because I'm quite intrigued by spending that much money. What's going to happen, and I kind of want to follow that because I like
Well,
Sony
yeah.
products. Like I love their headphones. Like don't get me wrong, their headphones are amazing. I don't like their TVs, but you know, them's the breaks.
Do they still make TVs? I don't even know. Right?
They do.
Like I don't even know. Like do they still make TVs? I remember like I used to own like an
It's
old
their
like,
nasty, still dark secret. They don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
It's the child that sits in the corner and going, "Shh, be quiet."
Yeah, Samsung still leads on that, I think. Yeah.
What I find really interesting about this story is that, you know, whenever I noticed on social media, like once this story came out, like you had a lot of very angry PlayStation people, like why did they do something like that and all this different stuff. And I think ultimately Sony's not a perfect company. No company's perfect. They all make, bad decisions and whatever. But I don't think that this is necessarily a bad decision. I think that this probably and quite possibly could be a very good decision. They wouldn't just drop $250 million on just a whim, right? They're expecting something back. And we know that, of course, we do know that Sony does have a very good relationship with Epic, right?
Well, you look at the Unreal Engine 5 demo on PlayStation.
Sure.
That's part of their good relationship.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they for a lot of it, they were talking about PlayStation this, PlayStation that, PlayStation this, and then of course one of the developers of the Unreal Engine did also mention other platforms as well. But a huge focus of that was on to PlayStation. But even more than just video games, if I'm not mistaken, during that demo for Unreal for the Unreal
Engine.
What number was that? Unreal 4? What is it? 5. Okay, Unreal 5 engine. They were also talking about how it could be implemented into movies. How they could do this for special effects and movies and stuff like that. And I don't know how big of an interest Sony has in that. I know that there's a video editing program called Sony Vegas. I don't know if Sony develops that. I would presume that they do. And Sony Vegas is used in a lot of like movies, editing movies and stuff like that. So I think ultimately there is a lot that could possibly come out of this from, PlayStation side of thing. Maybe they might possibly get early technology sooner. Epic, of course, is going to give that technology. They're going to allow everybody to use the Unreal 5 engine. They're going to share their technology with everybody because ultimately that's what's going to make them money, right?
Yeah.
But maybe Sony might be able to get it, early access to some of this technology have the ability to implement it into other areas of their business.
You hear about how Mark Cerny was talking about during his GDC conference there, talking about how you may end up seeing some of what we've done in the PlayStation 5 coming to other devices, whether that's PC or anything else in the future. So I think them doing that is a bit of a collaboration with Sony, giving them stuff, and then maybe they're going, we want to do this, let's work on it together, because they both have pieces of the puzzle and putting it together, they're going to create this big picture. So I think we're probably going to see some of that coming to fruition later down the line, where they have both built each other up and created these either new software.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows? But I think it's kind of interesting, and for the people to turn around and be quite negative at Sony, why? Why are you negative at creating possible advancements for yourself and everything doesn't have to be shut down just to PlayStation or just to
exactly. Because
you don't grow as a company by just staying in your own lane. You develop and grow as a company by interacting with other people.
Can I just jump in? I've just read more of what was being said here, and it looks more like, I think people have immediately jumped on the PlayStation bandwagon, but more I read about it is not necessarily to do with PlayStation, but more of just Sony as a whole. Reading on here, Tim Sweeney said, there's not some secret deal. 100% of the stuff we've been working on with Sony over the past months is now publicly announced. The UE5 demo on PlayStation 5 Nanite, Luminum, and Epic Online services for cross-platform play across all platforms. That's what they're looking to do with Sony.
Sure.
Sure.
I think they're going to work on stuff together.
And they said Fortnite is now an enormous platform for which music artists perform and current affairs debates are held alongside players shooting each other bits. Fortnite recently held a virtual Travis Scott concert, did you know that? And an incredible 27
I remember that.
And 27 million people tuned in. Given Sony's
Sure,
stakes in the music and
also-
film industry, you can see why it would want a piece of the pie. So it could be completely to do with like music and TV and nothing to do with gaming at all.
Absolutely it could. Absolutely it could. And from like another thing, I mean, Fortnite, you know, they are, just on a side note, they actually have been like playing live movies on like a big screen in Fortnite, which is like everybody just standing in Fortnite watching the movie. It's I find it just absolutely hilarious.
Outdoor cinema.
But I think a big reason why a lot of people are kind of upset is because they, you know, and this isn't to jump into console wars or anything like this. I love Xbox. You know, I really like PlayStation as well. I'm planning to get a PlayStation, you know, day one this new generation, right? But I think a lot of it stems from, you know, in some ways kind of jealousy. You know, everyone is hearing this news about Xbox possibly getting, you know, a lot of these Warner Brothers studios, and then what do they hear from PlayStation? Oh, they just dropped $250 million on Epic stock, right?
Yeah.
So I can kind of definitely see how they might be upset, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this transforms and impacts Sony as a business across, right? Not just with PlayStation, but with all of their other interests as well. I think it's a very interesting story. I just don't think that there's a tremendous amount of information
to read into,
to speculate on.
Yeah, and as I said, it's only they've only bought 1.4%. It's a massive minority stake of Epic, so it's not that big a deal to have any major control of anything. So people thinking now they're going to get Fortnite exclusive, they're mistaken.
I think people just need to sit back, see what happens, because then you're going to be able to provide a better opinion. Like, I heard it, I was like, oh, that's cool. I wonder what they're doing. Like, I was curious. I was intrigued. I didn't have this oh my gosh, it means that something bad is going to happen to Xbox because it's PlayStation related. But, like, obviously your mind goes to PlayStation because of what we do all the time. We game. And it's always console wars, which I don't really buy into. Yes, I am an Xbox fan overall. But you can't, like, deny the fact that all of these companies give something to their consumers. Nintendo, Zelda and Mario, like, biggest Zelda fan ever in the world. Like, so much Zelda memorabilia, love it to death. But I don't sit there and bag on Nintendo because Nintendo doesn't have Halo, Nintendo doesn't have Spider-Man. Like, I know what I get from Nintendo. I know what I can get from Sony. I know what I can get from Xbox, and it's my choice to game wherever I want to game. And it's my choice to enjoy entertainment no matter where I want to enjoy it, whether that's movies, whether that's subscription services. You know, like, just hold your horses, see what's actually going to come out of this, and then you can put your opinion in as to whether or not you like it. Like, I'm intrigued, I'm curious, and I really want to see where it goes.
Yeah. Right, I think we've done that subject to death. Should we move on to our final subject?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so we move on to our final subject, which is we want to talk about the price increase for games possibly happening. I've done a video on this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to let Red Panda fire on it because you wanted to talk about it. Yeah, this is a thing that's sort of close to your heart. Bless you.
I did want to talk about it. Well, so for me, being in New Zealand, the average gaming price, like brand new, is $109. So it's quite expensive. So I am a bit worried about what the price increase will mean over here. I mean, there's only one company that has announced an official increase in price, but they won't have announced that for no reason. They're looking at the market, they're seeing what's okay and what's not okay. And I think a lot of other gaming companies are going to start announcing a $10 price increase. And I think it is long overdue. Like, look at inflation. There hasn't been a price increase at all in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Skipped it.
So I do think it's overdue. my concern here, and I'm okay with the price increase. My concern here that I'm not okay with is where's that $10 going? For example, like $60 games to $70 games. I'm fine with that. I don't care. I think if it goes to the developers, that's going to be amazing. The cost for creating games has gone up exponentially. The production costs, like they pay for orchestras, they pay for motion capture, like unless they have their own mocap studio. They have to pay for talent. Like, money doesn't grow on trees, and if the developers aren't getting anything of this $10 price increase, I think that is just horrible. Like the idea of 2K Games doing that and then still keeping that $10 profit, keeping the microtransactions and charging ridiculous prices for DLC. What I want to see with this $10 price increase is the reduction of microtransactions, not having skins hidden away by this $5 charge to get the skin so everyone can look cool because you've got the most recent skin, or else you get made fun of, because that's what's happening. A lot of kids are getting made fun of because they can't afford to buy all of these skins that come out each week or each month or any time of day that it does come out, and then people start making fun of them because they can't afford it. What happened to I'm wearing the OG skin and that was a cool thing because you were stuff, and now it's like, no, you have to be the blingiest character in the game in order to be cool if you're playing multiplats. What happened to DLC, which just was well,
Free?
not even DLC. They have DLC that was free. What happened to the idea
Sea of Thieves.
of, like, games coming out? Yes, Sea of Thieves is a great example.
State of Decay, I think, as well.
Where it is free. But games coming out and they were complete. And they were polished and they were finished, and you didn't have to wait for DLC. Like, Nintendo has a history of releasing finished games, and then yes, they released DLC for Breath of the Wild, but that DLC was actually enjoyable, had some decent content in it, warranted it. They didn't charge ridiculous prices, in my opinion. But like Destiny DLC,
Destiny's the big one.
$70. In my country, $70 DLC, not okay. Definitely not okay. I mean, the Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, that remaster or remake or whatever they've done with it, in my country, that's a $70 game in comparison to a brand new game for $109. So I'm willing to spend money on that because they have put effort into improving it. They aren't charging a full price game for a game that's already released previously. I think moving into this current gen, that's the new gen, costs are going to continue to go up because they have all this power that they can utilize that they never used to be able to utilize. They can come up with ideas and go, we can add this into the game because we have all of this extra power, all of this extra CPU, all of this extra, like that's all I'm hearing is developers upon developers upon developers are saying they have access to resources they didn't have access to before because Sony and Microsoft have put a lot of time and effort into designing well-balanced systems that allow developers to design games that live up to their what's the word for it? Live up to their ambition. So I think we should be seeing games this new gen that don't include so many microtransactions, that don't have ridiculous costs for DLC, that are actually full price games that warrant full price and warrant an extra $10 charge and actually goes to the developer. If that's the case, then I'm all on board with the extra $10 increase. If it's not the case, I'm all on board with Game Pass because I know what value I get out of Game Pass, and I think it's made Game Pass that much more of a beacon of hope for gamers who can't afford, considering COVID, can't afford to put an extra $10 down on games. I'll stop ranting and let you guys jump in.
Yeah, so have not went up. And what I like to always refer to whenever we talk about that, and ultimately, I don't really think that $70 should become the new standard of what we buy brand new AAA games for. And the reason I say that is because, back whenever games cost $60, right? A lot of people weren't buying games. Not nearly the amount of people were buying games as are buying them now, right? And, the majority of that $60 price tag isn't the game being printed on a disc and put inside of a case and then mailed somewhere, right? That's not the majority of the cost. The majority of the cost is the actual production and marketing, of the game. And then, of course, there's a lot of, there's a big chunk of it that just goes to being profitable, right?
Yes.
So with more people buying games nowadays, with more people owning consoles and more people owning PCs and more people, with gaming on the rise, as probably, I think it's estimated that it's bigger than movies now, right?
It is.
With gaming being such a large industry now, it's okay for games to cost $60 because more people are buying those games, digitally, whatever. They're making more money. More people are buying it. Kind of is ultimately what I'm saying. So it helps combat, the rise of inflation because more people are buying your product, right?
Yes.
And ultimately your product is a digital product. It's software. Of course it costs X amount of dollars to create that and then, whatever, right? So I think ultimately that's one thing that kind of gets lost into this whole topic is that, yes, inflation's been going up. Yes, it costs more to create a game, but more people are buying games nowadays than were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, for
that
for
offsets
instance.
the cost. Yeah.
I also think that for the most part, and I could be mistaken, but I believe the first developer that came out to mention $70 games was for like was 2K, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's just be honest about 2K. 2K is one of the biggest money-hungry companies on this planet. They release a new sports game or new sports games every single year. And in addition to releasing that new sports game, they have outrageously expensive microtransactions. It's ridiculous. I've heard of multiple people. I know, people that I'm friends with, whenever a new 2K game comes out, they buy the game for $60, and then that very same day they drop $50 on microtransactions to get a leg up on on like the online multiplayer. And we've heard stories about EA, tons of money. I think more times than not, especially. And then by no means is that a $60 game. They charge $40 for it, right? We've seen this with the rise of indie games, them selling games for $30, for $20, right? And I think that is kind of the trend that we should be looking at. We should be looking at, as an industry standard, games are now going to cost $70. We should be looking at, is that game worth $70? If Cyberpunk 2077 came out and if it cost $70, guess what? I would buy that game for $70 because it's worth the money that I pay for it, right? There's enough content in that game to warrant me paying $70 for it. And I think ultimately that's kind of the problem, is that I just don't want to see there be, you know, I just don't want to see $70 become the flat out blank industry standard whenever it really shouldn't be. Because you're going to have a lot of these companies like Take-Two, like EA, Activision, and Blizzard just taking advantage of this. I truly do not believe that they need to charge an extra $10. They want to charge an extra $10 because they want more money because they're greedy, but they don't need to charge that extra $10. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. I think that, you know, if a game developer, you know, or publisher truly 110% needed to charge an extra an extra $20 for a game, you know, I think that there's a market for that. I really do. I think ultimately there is a market for that. But generally speaking, I think for a majority of games, that, you know, $10-$20, you know, increase in price is not worth it. And I think the idea of them doing that is going to actually take money away from them. As I said before, at the very opening of this rant, a big reason why I kind of think it is unnecessary to increase the amount of money is because, yes, inflation's been rising, but what has also been rising is people's interests in gaming. People are now buying more games now today than they were back in 2010, before, more now than they were in 2015, right? Gaming has become more popular. And, you know, especially we're looking at, you know, at the possibility of people getting into mobile gaming, you know, where they might possibly be buying, you know, a game on, xCloud for $60 and playing it on their smartphone this next, you know, upcoming generation. Well, the problem with this whole thing is, okay, you raise the price of games, that's not going to, you know, people are going to stop buying games, and ultimately you're going to be losing money, or maybe at best making the same amount of money that you were before. And so that's ultimately, I think, the problem is that inflation has been rising, but people have continued to buy games. You increase the price of games, people are going to buy less games, and you're probably going to make less money.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. Like, if with what you're saying, like, I guess with 2K, if they came out and gave a reason why this current gen versus next gen is $10 in difference. Yes, they've said we're making the game ground up to utilize the new systems. What are you doing? How have you done that? Tell us why that game is worth $10, and maybe we'll consider, with an extra $10, maybe we'll consider purchasing it. Like, if they can actually warrant it and prove to us gamers, the consumers, why the game is worth an extra $10, yes, you can have my $10. So 100% agree with you there. Like, some games are not going to be that industry standard of like $70 if that's where the industry is wanting to go. Indie games will start off cheaper unless it warrants more money. Like, they know what their game is worth, they know what people are willing to pay for their games, and I think a lot of these bigger companies don't take that into consideration. They just see the dollar sign. I also think the writing's on the wall for the fact that, like, in the UK, they've done all those studies around gambling, and it looks like loot boxes are going to be chucked in under gambling, and it won't be available for the masses.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to try and recoup their losses, because if they want to sell their games to as many people as possible, but having loot boxes and considered gambling means they actually can't sell to everyone, because you have to be over a certain age to engage in gambling. So how do they get around that? By recouping what they can't get through loot boxes, putting an extra $10 price tag on that. Yeah. That's another way that is concerning for me, that they are going to do that because they can't put loot boxes in games anymore.
The reason why
they don't do loot boxes, it's just going to be microtransactions.
Yeah, the reason why I quit playing the FIFA games was basically back in 2014. Is basically because the game now is pay to win. That it's just that loot crate things where you give real money, and there's a chance you get one of these cards, and it could be an excellent player. If it's not, then what you do is you then give them more real money, and then you get a better chance of getting a decent player. And you're thinking, yeah, it is gambling basically, because you're giving them money in exchange for a possibility. It's basically like a scratch card for a possibility of getting like Ronaldo or someone on your team. But people do it. Lots of people do it, and the game will come out within the first day. You'll see people with like top rated players running around on the pitch. And you're just thinking, and that's why I quit playing it, because it's just pay to win. I don't like games like that.
Well, and I think one of probably the most interesting, ideas of this whole topic is just looking at the history of the first company that we've now heard coming out about this increase,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being 2K, right? Which is a money hungry company through and through with their microtransactions and loot boxes and all the things that they put into their 2K games, right? I think that that's the really interesting theme about this is that, maybe if Cyberpunk or CD Projekt Red, the people, the makers behind Cyberpunk 2077, if they came out and if they said, hey, we're going to have to charge an extra $10 for this game, I think generally speaking people would understand it a little bit better, right? But whenever the very first notion of this idea pops up, and it being 2K Games that promotes it, that's really, I think, the really important takeaway to this being more about greed than it being actually about them being able to make a sustainable profit off of a video game, like what we've seen countless other companies do in the past.
2K are notorious, man. Oh.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to more of greed than it does them having to do this.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think I'm going to end it there. Are you guys happy to end it there? You got any more points to make on the price increase?
No.
No. Right. I think I'll end the show there then. If you all guys happy to do that. Thank you, Zemi, for joining us in this episode. I'll hopefully have you back soon.
Thank you.
And we'll get a couple more. Do you want to give another shout out to where we can find you and stuff?
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely. So, once again, if you guys enjoyed my opinions on this podcast, or maybe you absolutely hated them, that's perfectly fine too. Definitely go check out my Twitter at Zimmy Games. My DMs are always open. So regardless of if you loved my opinions, hated them, always feel free to send me a DM. I love interacting with the community and just meeting new people. Also, feel free to check out my YouTube channel at Zimmy Games. I do a bunch of gaming content, gaming news, reviews, tutorials, unboxings, all sorts of stuff over there. So definitely go check that out at Zimmy Games as well. And thank you so much, Elite and Panda, for letting me be on your podcast.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you to hear your voice and have your opinions on it. It's brilliant to have just
thank you so much.
opinions. Yeah, and thank you, Red, again as always, for joining us.
Yeah.
And we'll...
You know where to find me? Red Dead Panda Games on YouTube and at Red Dead Panda 1 on Twitter. So please DM me, message me. I'm happy to engage with everyone. I like different opinions, and it actually changes a lot of my opinions. Like this whole last week, I have been listening to everyone's ideas around the price increase because I had my own ideas, and just going, oh, I didn't think of it like that. That changes everything. So I'm happy and want as many different opinions as I can because it just makes me a better all-round balanced gamer in general.
Makes us all better people. To actually listen to people's opinions rather than judge them.
Yeah, exactly. Got to be open-minded.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye for now.
Thank you. Bye.